Hello, everyone. It's me again, the Blue Princess, here to start off the third episode of my podcast, The Mad Ramblings of the Blue Princess, by talking about a manga I've just gotten into called Souboutei Must Be Destroyed. Now, this manga is it's got probably one of the best first chapters I've read in a manga in a long time. So the main premise of Souboutei Must Be Destroyed is basically that there's this haunted mansion that everybody is working together to destroy because they've all been affected by the mansion in some way. And like I really love how the way this show opens, I mean this manga opens by it shows us with these two kids like frightened exploring the mansion trying to get out because they clearly see some shit. And then there's their friend who's also been affected by the mansion is turned into a monster, and they run out fleeing for their lives, managing to escape. And then we cut years later to reveal that the two boys have become like the prime minister and lead of defense in Japan, basically the most powerful people in Japan, and they've gone through all this work just so that they can have a chance to destroy the mansion. And like I really love how the building itself isn't just set up as like just your average haunted housing, but like a building of pure evil that spreads suffering to all those who touch. And like I really like how they show that even like some of mankind's most powerful weapons can't hammer the house. Because like in the first chapter, we see like the prime minister send a bunch of bomber jets to destroy the mansion, and it destroys every building around it, but the mansion still stands there untouched by anything. It's like it's super intimidating just right off the bat that this whole force is like this house isn't just haunted; it's a physical force of nature. And another thing that I really like about the first chapter is the rest of the series is Toko is sorry, probably saying it wrong, but Takoha, or is it Takoa? Takoha, Takoha. Gonna go with that pronunciation. If anybody in the comments knows the proper pronunciation, please let me know so that I can do it better. But yeah, but he's an incredibly likable protagonist right back because he's set up as the struggling artist trying his best to make it big in the art field, which again makes him like already gives him that underdog quality that makes him likable. But like then there's another scene where we see him like helping his neighbor's kid against some bullies, which again really sets up the idea that Takoha is like just a very likable and good-hearted person. Which again, I think is something you really want in a story like this, especially when you got such disturbing and terrifying imagery and the premise of this horrific haunted house that's caused suffering for generations. You really want the protagonist to be someone who is like who contrasts that by just being an incredibly likable and kind-hearted person. Um, and another thing I also noticed I find interesting is the series seems to set up that like normal means won't be enough to destroy the mansion. That you need like some sort of like otherworldly power, or spiritual power. And yeah, which again I think makes sense, especially with how they further explain the mansion. And another mystery that they set up in the first chapter is really good. Is like right after the bombing, a mysterious plane for 40 that disappeared 45 years ago reemerges, and on board the plane is a feral child who also is here to destroy the mansion. So again, it's very interesting because it does a really good job of like setting up all these mysteries. Like the beginning of this chapter feels kind of like trying to get the cinema. It feels like one of those like supernatural mystery shows that were like really popular in the 2000s. Like not something like supernatural, more like it kind of it's hard to describe. It's kind of got those the energy of like maybe Gravity Falls is the best way to describe it. So we're saying like that where a bunch of mysterious shit just keeps happening and getting thrown at you. You're trying to wonder around what it's all like. And like Stephen King, yeah, the energy is sort of like I'd best compare it to something kind of like Stephen King's work, where there's this bizarre mystery and there's sort of like otherworldliness to it all. It probably doesn't make any sense, but like you get it when you read the manga. Um, 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 Something else that think is really interesting is that the mysterious feral child on the airplane, who has the ability to transform his bodies into like these destructive drills, is that he's actually a long lost relative of Takoha. Like he's like distant and missing, and I do think that's kind of interesting because it's sort of like, again, it sort of ties Takoha into this mystery already, not by again giving him some sort of like a long lost familial relationship. And though so far in the first arc, they haven't really shown um much of a connection between these two. I definitely feel like eventually we're gonna see more interactions with these two later, and future arcs. At least I'm hoping so, because I think that would be interesting. And I think I saw like the final volume of this manga, and it was the two of them. So I get the feeling that there's definitely going to be more between them later. But yeah, chapter 2 is also where we get the scene that sort of like made Takoha, Takoha, Aka favorite. And it's this one where like so I forgot to mention in the first chapter, Takoha, the kid Takoha defends his new neighbor. He ends up being a victim of the mansion. His father gets killed, and he ends up being a survivor, and he's traumatized by it. And Takoha kind of blames himself a little bit because he suggested beforehand that the neighbor boy should like check out the mansion and like explore it, even though he's not supposed to. Which like again was just meant to be a joke. He didn't think anything bad of it, but of course Takako like blames himself for this. But like what I love about this scene is like later we see people from the government like asking the boy about the situation, and they're about to show him these horrific, traumatizing photos to this kid of his father's death because his body was all burned up. And like Taco immediately he jumps in, he hides the photos away from the kids, and he's like immediately steps in to stop this bullshit in order to protect the innocent child. And I just love that about Taco. I love characters that go out of their way to call out higher authority on their bullshit when they're doing something wrong, especially if their actions are affecting like innocent people. I just love that stuff in the story, and it made me love Takaho so much. And okay, next up, I really like we get introduced to the older sister of the boy, Kurenai, who's like she's this super powerful Shiren maiden who's like here to like not only take care of her brother, but eventually she goes on to fight the mansion. And I what I love about her is that she's like she at first comes up as this stoic, incredibly powerful person, but then we find out that she's just a huge crybaby and a ditz. Because like we see her like trying to find directions to the hospital, and she keeps getting lost. And when she finally makes it, she just starts crying her eyes out because she's taking her forever to get to this. And that's just like, it's really funny the contrast between like the what you expect of the character and what the character actually is. Like good stuff leads to a lot of great comedy. Um, and so eventually the neighbor boy, who I think's name is Rakuro, um, he ends up he ends up teaming up with the feral child whose name is Sichi because they both want to destroy the mansion. And of course, I do think it's interesting that the two children end up getting paired together because there's definitely a part of like with them, there's a gap between them and the older characters where the older characters, on some level, don't quite understand their plight and their desire to destroy the mansion. Both because on some adults don't believe them, but also because on some level do look down to them and children. It's not like they're doing it in a negative way. They want to protect the kids, but of course that also means that in doing so they're unwilling to let the boys like fulfill the desire to destroy the mansion because they don't realize how personal this is. But because these two characters are the same age, they're able to understand each other's plight so well, and that's sort of like why they're able to team up and why they form their friendship, which is like really good stuff. I also found it interesting that like Suichi ends up going back to his old ham, which has been destroyed and deserted, and it also appears to be haunted for some reason. And like at first, I mistakenly believed that Suichi's house was like the Souboutei mansion, but it's not. I completely misunderstood. But I do wonder what exactly were causing these strange spirits to like haunt the house, especially because we later get more clarification on Sichi's past in this arc, but it doesn't really 100% answer why that is. I don't know. Maybe something they'll explain later, or maybe it's just one of those things where I gotta like figure it out on my own. And one thing I really noticed while reading this manga that I thought was interesting, it sort of made me realize why exactly haunted houses are so scary. Because like a house is basically like it's a home. It's supposed to be the symbol of comfort and love, someplace you can always go back to even in hard times. But by filling it with like evil and supernatural spirits, it becomes perverted and distorted into like some sort of abomination of like death and suffering. And that's sort of like I think that's the main appeal and terror of a haunted house, taking something that's supposed to be a place of comfort and turning it into a place of fear, which again, really good stuff. Okay, and it's also later revealed that the mansion itself was created by an eccentric artist, which like makes sense because later on when we get too into the mansion, we learn that like there's the monsters and stuff are all hiding inside different paintings. So like again, it ties back to that idea of art and ties it back to the horror, which again makes sense because they established that the creator of this mansion was an artist. But I think it also will serve much later to develop intriguing contrasts between Takaho and the mansion and this horrors because he himself is also an artist. Also, I freaking love Sichi because there's a scene later in which the boys are like they hid in the school because they can't go back to the hospital and stuff because the adults will try to stop them. So they hide in Roako's, I'm probably mispronouncing his name again, so sorry about that. Um, School, and then later we see Sichi like he's watching the other kids learning and stuff and teaching, and so he begins to like he's watching it too, trying to study and learning how to write. It's just so precious because like up to this point we've seen Sichi as this feral, violent creature, but as we get to see more of him, we reveal that like he really is at heart just a kid trying his best. He is, despite his powers and his violent actions, he is ultimately still a child in this world, which again I really like that sort of stuff. Really good characterization. Later, eventually, Kurenai and Takuko get recruited to destroy the mansion, and Kurenai is all for that because she wants to spare her brother from the suffering of the mansion because she knows that if he tries to go there to fight it, he'll also get in trouble. So So eventually they end up joining a group of like supernatural experts to take down the mansion. And Takaho is recruited because one, he like he 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 was able to get like drawings of the mansion which they can use for like, helping them sort of like get a full scale of it, but also because he read a book that used to belong to the creator of the mansion, and because it was destroyed along with his house during the bombing, he's the only one with knowledge of the book, so he's considered vital to the invasion on the mansion. And also I forgot to probably should have said this at the beginning, but basically I'm just gonna cover the what from what I can tell is the first arc of the manga, which I dubbed the Souboutei Invasion, because a lot of this arc is about the character sort of like going into the mansion and trying to destroy it. Which again, I try to find arc listings online, but there don't seem to be any for this manga. So this is just like the name I'm gonna give the arc, but like it's probably best known as just like the first arc. And but yeah, we get to see a bunch of the supernatural experts. Many of them have met Kurenai and the ones that I find the most interesting because there's this group of like American scientists who like look at the supernatural from a more scientific lens, and they're like super into Magnus, which I just thought was funny. But my favorite of the other supernatural is there's this like this couple, these pyromancy couple, basically like there's the husband who's like this burly man who like always pushing around his wife in her wheelchair because like the wife she's in a wheelchair and she has this like creepy doll that she can shoot fire from, but she's also a bit of a mute. Well, not exactly, but she doesn't quite exactly like talk normally, and I'm guessing that's probably because of searches that we haven't seen before. But like, and that would definitely seem to be tied to her pyromancy powers in the doll. But like, they're just so awesome because like they're this loving couple, but also because they also seem to be like of the supernatural group. Because a lot of the other people we see in the supernatural group are very aggressive and arrogant, but this couple they're like a lot more chill, a lot more calm, and they seem to like generally like Kurenai more than a lot of the other supernatural actors. So out of all the ones they've seen, these so far seem to be like the best people of the supernatural experts, not counting Kurenai and Takako, of course. And one thing I noticed about Takaho that I think makes it such a interesting protagonist, especially for a shonen manga, and that he's very much an ideal adult in that like he holds like this great compassion for children, but he's also very much willing to engage on their level instead of looking down on them like most of the other adults we see in the series. But also is that he has a knack for seeing people's true feelings. Because there's a scene where like Kurenai, she's all depressed because she feels like her brother doesn't think she has what it takes to destroy the mansion, but Taco clarifies that no, that's not it. Her brother's just worried she's going to get hurt, so that's why he doesn't want her to go to the mansion because he wants to keep her safe. And it shows that Taco is really good at like seeing people's true feelings. He can like see past the facades and persona and understand the true hearts of people. And like another thing we so again because I mentioned earlier in the Jews chapter, but he very much prioritizes like the safety and well being of a child above other things. Where we see other adults in the series are willing to like put that aside in favor of their goals and like their antics. Basically, to describe Taco in the best way, he's basically a comfort blanket in like sort of human form. He's just a very nice, compassionate person that people are able to find connections and kindness, but also comforting. And that makes him the purpose protagonist for a shonen manga itself, especially because like the readers themselves, again, shonen refers to like young boys, would see themselves in characters like Rakuko or Shoichi, or no, wait, that's not how it's pronounced. I was saying it wrong. Saichi, yeah, I think that's probably how it's pronounced. See themselves in Saichi. So of course they're gonna relate. They're gonna enjoy Takugo because he's the character that like empathizes with the kids the most. Again, and stuff. It probably sounds a bit madness, but like when you read it, you're really gonna get it that like Taco himself is very much this like he is very much what a kid would see as an ideal adult. And another thing I really like about the storyboard matches is the front of it looks like a monster with the many eyes looking like with the windows themselves looking like multiple eyes and the doorway looking like a giant gaping mouth. Um, I also love current how because later in the other we see the other supernatural insults like insult the pyromancy lady and sort of like looking down to her, but then Kurenai immediately comes to her defense, which is like results in the lady like becoming very fond of Kurenai, nice to her, which like again I like it. It sure forces these bonds between these characters in a way that I find is like very interesting. It's like very much poking a focus on like sort of humans' compassion in the face of like arrogance or an evil. That probably sounds a bit weird, but you I need to stop saying you'll get it if you read the manga because that's just gonna sound silly. Anyway, another part that I really love is like they reveal this whole army of like cops and soldiers that went missing in the match, and they've all become like these weird zombie creatures, and it's like again, it's like really creepy and intimidating. But I think the most scary part is when they reveal that like the army, they're not dead, they're all alive. They've just been possessed by the evil of the mansion. So again, it adds to the creepy factor. The fact that these people have remained alive for like decades or years. These because again, they've showed that a lot of cops and soldiers have disappeared in this mansion over the years. So like these people have been here for a long time, but they've been eventually stripped of all humanity and agency, turned into these beings that like look like zombies but are still like cursed to be alive, and it's like really terrifying. Like of course, and I also like how Takoha is like against killing the possessed army, and like how Kurenai like avoids killing them. Like it's a really good way to show the compassion of these characters, especially in comparison to the other supernatural experts who are willing to like kill kill the possessed army. And like we do later, and like of course Chaco and Kurenai later like understand what has to be done, and like I think Kurenai does just end up destroying some later because like especially when they but that's more so because they understand the grave circumstances of how these people have been possessed and why the fact that they can't exactly be saved. But and like it's not a case of these characters don't care that therefore they're good, but more so the fact that they show this willingness to hesitate. It's a really good idea of showing the like sort of compassion of these characters in comparison to the other characters, but also shows their sort of the naivety they possess. I love the cliffhanger at the end of chapter 16. Like it goes really hard, and like it must have been insane reading this manga weekly because there's so many like just insane chapter endings. I also think it's interesting that they later reveal that people who survive the Surge to Mansion have the ability to see in total darkness. Because like I think it's like a good way to visualize that these characters are like they've forever lost their innocence thanks to their encounter with the mansion. So now they possess the ability to see depth, the true depths of darkness in all its entirety. Like, am I overthinking it? Probably, but I just think it's like a really cool detail. Yeah, and like again, as we go through manga, it makes very clear that the paintings themselves are the source of the monsters. And I really like how Josephine, that's the name of the Pyronancy old lady in the wheelchair, the wife who uses the creepy doll and stuff. How like she's the first one of the supernatural aspects to realize oh shit, there's like these there are monsters in these paintings. Like again, it's really because like it's established earlier, but it's become most apparent here that out of all the supernatural experts, she's like the one with the most power and the most experience. So it makes sense that she would be like the first one to realize that there are monsters in the self in the portrait paintings. And yeah, and it's like and this layer gets clarified later in the arc, but like basically the paintings themselves are all portraits of the people that they're trying to lure into the trap for the monsters. Basically, that the paintings take the appearance of the people who enter the mansion, and then use that to lure them in traps so that the monsters can attack them and possess them. That's them, yeah. But I also we also see that when the monsters take people into the paintings, that what they do is they show the most traumatic event of from a person's past. Like their sins, their greatest source of torment, and use that as a fear, and use that to cause them the greatest amount of fear and emotional distress. Because and I find that very interesting because one thing I think mankind fears above all else is punishment for their past sins. But there's also this idea that they're using people's mistakes or their traumatic, or not even stuff that's mistakes, just horrible experiences they went through, using it to torment them. And it's so, I think what makes it so terrifying is just such a blatantly evil and horrendous act, because it's taking the most painful and horrendous experiences in a person's life and using it to emotionally break them so that you could literally steal their bodies away from them. It's just something so horrendously cruel and evil that it makes it all the more terrifying. Um, and as we see people getting sucked into paintings, they all have this brief expansion to a mysterious painter whose appearance becomes clearer and clearer every time we go in. And eventually, Takoha Takoha eventually gets sucked into one of the paintings. And he's the first person to actually talk to the painter, which is super fitting and I think perfect, not just because it fits Takoha's personality, because he's very much this talkative and compassionate person. He's the one who will have a chat with a total stranger about something. But also because he himself is also an artist, so of course he would be the one most interested in talking to this mysterious painter. And I also love it that this is the first time we see the painter's face. First time this mysterious painter is truly being humanized is through Takako, who again we've been shown is the most empathetic and humanizing character. But also again though, there's this idea of sort of an artist connection. And I really like the conversation they have here because we can tell that the painter himself isn't really used to talking to people, but he immediately takes an interest in Tako because he's also an artist and he also has interesting things to say about painting and work, because Tako himself, he really likes this mysterious painter's work because it's all creepy and disturbing. Because Tako himself also likes creating sort of these messy, creepy artwork. So, of course, it makes sense they make connection because of their not just being an artist, but also because Tako had this way of very much getting into people's hearts and sort of become making an instant impact on them. And also how this is what eventually gives Takako his power, because through this experience he gains the ability to go through the mansion by using the mysterious black hands wherever he wants. Which again is very interesting that because Tako did something that none of the other characters were willing to do, actually engage with this mysterious painter instead of just ignoring him, he in turn is rewarded. Yeah. But yeah, again, we end up Taco eventually he sort of explains how the monsters within the paintings basically use these traumatic experiences to break people. And I love how Taco approaches because he's the first person we see here who's actually able to overcome the trauma. Because we see him a mass memory of him being abused by his harsh dad who was the teacher who was it very much makes it clear that he was trying to give some form of tough love by being always sending him out in class trying to make sure he did better. But still, so clearly the methods were incredibly harsh and basically abusive towards children. But we see that Takako, when faced with it, he's no longer afraid of his father. He's no this thing that used to torment and cause him so much grief is now gone. And I think it's not just meant to represent the fact of him sort of growing up and conquering this childhood fear, but it's also very much an instance of him how great his sort of empathy and how sort it also shows us sort of this complication with his father's relationship, because you see most people would despise and hate their father, but it's not Takako really hates his father now. It's he's developed some sort of peace with him. Not necessarily I'd say complete forgiveness, but more he's sort of come to terms with his father. And I also love how another part how the monsters again try to torment Taco by showing him another traumatic experience for when his dad when the school he was run ended up going to failure and he ended up and his father was in a dark moment and he was stuck having to take care of his dad. His father was tormented by these shadows in the darkness, and this terrified Takako. But once again, he overcomes this trauma and he pushes through it. And again, that's what makes Takaho, I think, such a good character. Why I instantly sort of gravitate and love him, because he's very much a person who has the strength to not only overcome traumas, but also being willing to empathize with others, which we see later up because Tako ends up going to save Kurenai, who's also been taking over the monsters, And he basically saves her from getting taken over by the monsters by encouraging her to forgive herself. Which again is another way of the manga showing that Tako is this ideal adult who like always shows empathy and compassion for those, especially those younger than him. But again, it's also a really good way of showing like how he contrasts the monsters within this mansion, where these monsters like they use people's sins, their trauma, their horrific these horrific and tormenting experiences. And he sort of like not only shows people compassion in these moments, but he also encourages them to love themselves and to show themselves forgiveness, to push past their trauma and to try their best to like live in the world, because like sort of giving into this trauma, giving into their mistakes, letting the monsters take over is eventually giving up on life. But by Tako's action, by his acts of kindness, forgiveness, and encouragement, he's pushing people forward to continue living, to reject the death these monsters offer. Uh, but yeah, eventually like and eventually we end up discovering that like these monsters from the Souboutei Mansion have been sending paintings to the Prime Minister for decades of the Prime Minister of Japan, of course, for like decades and decades, also to try to like take them over for some sort of plan they're plotting. And like this is, I love this because it adds a conspiracy aspect to the aspect of the story that just makes it all the more interesting. Sort of like giving this idea that this isn't just some sort of like supernatural haunted house story, that this is something way bigger. And when we find out more about it in the arc, it's like, oh, it's so good, it's so good. Like all these different elements just being used as manga to perfect to tell such a really good story. Eventually, we end up encountering more people, more supernatural experts who have been taken over by the monsters who've been possessed. We end up learning that eventually the monsters themselves are able to completely take over the human body and even obtain the memories of the person. But the personalities are completely different now, which I think makes the monsters all the more creepy. Because not only there's this aspect of they completely steal a person's body and replace them entirely, but there's now this uncanny valley to the people they possess, where where they possess the same memories as they do the people, but their personalities are no longer the same. So it makes it, if you knew the person who got possessed, all the more terrifying and creepy. Which again, is really good. We later see the professor, because the professor himself, the guy, the American who's got this whole team of like scientists investigating supernatural stuff, like he's been shown throughout the story this really harsh, sort of mean and sort of cruel person who looks down on who looks down on his colleagues and sort of sees them just like as essential to him. But we end up seeing after they end up having to fight and kill some of the possessed colleagues that he does in fact possess compassion and interest to them, but he's not really willing to show it, and he only sort of displays this when they're gone, which I think is sort of very interesting for a character because, like, again, it's sort of like that stereotypical grumpy old man who's like on some level unwilling to completely connect with people, but we show that deep down he does in fact care for them, which again, good characterization stuff. Next up, we finally learn what happened to Sichi during the 45 years once they disappeared. Turns out that the plane that he and his family were on was abducted by these mysterious aliens. So another group of aliens grabbed them away from their abductors and brought them to their planet. And basically, the planet is basically like this giant planet made of living sentient water that can shapeshift and like has all these like telekinesis powers. It can read people's minds and connect with them. I really love this alien planet made of water. Like it's a really cool idea, and seeing it develop emotions as it interacts with more of humanity is like it's so much fun to read and watch. Does a really good job at like tugging at the heartstrings and then like engaging with us. And so eventually Saichi and all his family and all the other inhabitants on the plane, they live together on the planet for a while as the planet itself like takes form of their loved ones in order to help them better cope, and it ends up bonding with them. But eventually it turns out the alien invaders that first abducted the plane are also invading the water planet and are killing it, trying to like suck it all away. And this leads into chapter 36, which is one of the most perfect chapters that I've ever read in manga. It does such a good job at displaying pure, raw human emotions and all their beauty. It shows happiness, love, anger, grief, sadness, kindness, hope, and all of it just perfectly in one chapter, because we see the people who have gotten close to this planet and and the recreations of their loved ones created by the planet, and we see the sort of bond and how much impacts, how much they've not only have they taught this planet the ability to feel emotions and allowed it to gain its own form of happiness, but they themselves have developed a true bond and love with this planet. So eventually, thanks to Suichi's display of anger, they all work together with the planet to fight against the invaders. And I love how basically what they do is in order to fight with the planet is that like they go into the water and then the water takes shapes based on their rage. And I love how different people's rage take different forms. Like Suichi himself has the drills, of course, which we've seen throughout the series, but we see other people like either with knives or planes, or I think one was like a screwdriver, like just a really cool concept. And I really like how, because the people have been fighting alongside the water for so long, that they eventually merge with it, becoming like these sort of like ageless powerful beings, which explains Suichi's bizarre appearance and powers. Again, all really good stuff. And it's like, this is the moment in which I fell in love with this manga and my brain was completely blown, because it's like this manga, it started off as what we seemed as like a standard like creepy haunted house thing, but as it moved on, we end up learning that there's actually not just supernatural, but a huge mix of space opera in it, and a whole the perfect blend of sci-fi and fantasy. Because as we turn out, the monsters within the house and within Souboutei, within the mansion, hiding in the paintings, they are the alien invaders that Sichi and his people and his family were fighting all those years. Turns out that the Souboutei Mansion isn't just like a haunted house. It's a freaking gateway to an alien planet for an invasion. That's why they've been trying to take over the prime ministers. That's why they're possessing all these people. It's not just ghosts, dude. It's not just like some haunted mansion we thought it was. It's a freaking alien invasion. That's so cool. It's like, how do you pull off something this brilliant and this clever in only like the first like 30 or 40 chapters? Like, this is a plot twist you expect at the end of the series, but no, we're just still in the first damn arc. Holy crap, it's so good. And even with this sci-fi twist, the horror aspects are still there. Because, like, again, horror isn't just saying relegated to supernatural ghosts. There's plenty of, like, space horror movies and stuff. So it's basically taking two sort of, like, different types of horrors and blending them together to create this manga that is, like, this perfect hybrid. It's got, like, conspiracy. It's got supernatural fantasy. It's got psychics. It's got alien invasions. It's got operatic space battles. It is so cool. So cool. I don't think there's ever gonna. I don't even know if I'll read another manga this clever or this like compelling with its stuff. But yeah, my next point is they eventually do a title drop in chapter 41 where somebody says Souboutei Mansion must be destroyed, and a bunch of them repeating, and it's like, oh, it's the coolest thing. And this was one of my favorite parts of the arc. So we should just explain the entire backstory to all the former prime ministers as they've all sort of band together to work against this threat. So cool. Oh, it's so epic. You really get the sense that this is an epic and amazing story. Also, like, there's another point how, like, the oldest prime minister points out that he's not exactly a good person. He's doing a lot of selfish things, which I like, because even though the current prime ministers that we've seen have been sort of being these build up or these sort of hype cool guys who are trying to do everything they can to destroy the mansion, so he's acknowledging that in real life a lot of prime ministers or politicians do bad things, but we also see this old prime minister saying that he's going to do everything in his power to help Suichi and change his goals. Sort of showing this like this kindness and humanity even in the face of like people who have spent most of their lives as cowardly scums. It is all really good stuff. And like, I also like how even after the alien invasion, we seem to see that the mansion itself seems to be in greater evil than even the aliens. Because when Sichi first encounters the mansion, he's like scared of it. It's like he describes it as a place emanating pure malice and evil. It's just like, oh, what is going on with this mansion? How did it become like a gateway to an alien invasion? What's up with the bizarre supernatural stuff? Like, it's such a good mystery. You just want to figure out what the hell is wrong with this house. So cool. But yeah, I also love how like we end up learning that the pyromancy couple managed to avoid being possessed, and I love that because like of course they're like clearly the most powerful, the supernatural experts, so of course they wouldn't get possessed by these monsters and be able to keep going on. But I also like because again they've got a really good dynamic with Kurenai and Takoha, so I want to see more of them. We also find out that Josephine's husband, the guy who pushed her around in wheelchair, is actually like this buff motherfucker who can like beat the shit out of people, and it's just like, oh, I love it. Old buff men who are badasses and are buff as shit are the coolest. Okay, fucking dope as hell. Next point. I really love how we later on. So we end up there was like a I forgot to mention the room, but there was another group of supernatural experts who were like these three sisters whose powers light and they're like supernatural eyes and powers to see stuff, and they can also like summon these like spirits and god and stuff. They're cool, but they're also like super haughty and arrogant, and they were kind of mean, and they've been shown to be like really mean to Tako and Kurenai early on. But later, two of the sisters end up getting caught by the monsters in the paintings. And I love how Takago goes to save them without a second thought. He doesn't even like hesitate, even though they've been treating him like complete crap. He sees they're in danger and he immediately jumps in to help them. Which again, awesome. I love Takago. He's such a good character. He's the coolest. He's just like so good. Um, During one of the while he's helping one of the sisters, they end up revealing because he ends up freeing one sister and then he joins up with her to save the other sister, but the other sister's like she's almost possessed by the aliens. So what the sister does is she says that like basically any object created by a human contains some type of soul energy. So using her powers, she's able to bring to life one of Tako's drawings to save her sister. And I think this is really interesting because I think this might be connected to the origin behind the evil of the Souboutei Mansion. This idea that like because again the mansion itself was made by somebody, by an eccentric artist. So perhaps that explains the evil in the mansion. Perhaps the because it was made by this human, his own malevolent energy from his soul became part of the house, and that's why it's so evil. I don't know. I could just be wrong. I could be overthinking it, but I get the feeling that could tie into stuff later. I do wonder if this will also tie into like maybe later fights with Takuho. Like maybe the idea of his drawings coming to life again will be more prevalent later. I'm not sure. Then again, I don't know if Takoha will have a straight up fight himself. Like he's definitely gonna if there is a fight involving him, he's definitely working with someone else to do most of the action. Um, I also really related to the part with Taco where he talked about his experiences in our school and how he felt inferior to his peers, but still pushed on despite that. Because like I myself, like I went to college to sort of become a better artist. Still working on improving my art. If you see my Discord, still got a long ways to grow. But I always felt sort of inferior to my classmates because I always felt that their work was just so much better than what I was doing. Like that these people were like on a higher level. So it really related to what Taco said and that sort of desire to keep to wanting to push forward and to reach the same heights as them. Like sort of prove. Yeah, but it's definitely difficult because Taco his peers were kind of like sort of hardy and mean, and they sort of like kept pointing out that because Taco didn't like go on these worldly experiences, he can't reach the same heights of archery as them, which is like yeah, it's a really mean thing to say with person, very much revealing of someone's like privilege. Um Next up in chapter 49 is like another awesome chapter because it's all about Takoho convincing the remaining supernatural experts to stay in the mansion so that they can destroy it for good because they want to like take a break and leave the mansion believing they've done all they can. But Taco is like, no, we can't because he knows that if they leave the mansion, they won't have the guts to go back into it. So what he does is he doesn't just like appeal to their inner torment humanity to convince them to stay. He also like appeals to their fighting spirit and their anger towards the mansion. Their mutual desire to see this abomination be destroyed, to learn its secrets and crush it once and for all. And I like that because, like, this is something we see later on, but I definitely, there's a sort of this theme of anger, but not necessarily that anger is 100% a bad thing, but sort of this idea of, like, our anger and aggression sort of, like, helps us push us forward to do what we need to do in the face of fear, which is good. Later, we end up discovering that like the army of possessed soldiers, as it turns out, are like they've all been busy doing something, and we end up seeing them all heading towards John the mansion. We find out that they're all digging underground with their bare hands, scraping up the dirt and stuff. And it's so just unnerving and creepy to look at because it sort of gives us this imagery of like like they're trying to open up a gateway to hell. It's weird and cool all at the same time. It's just like, oh, it's creepy. The way they descend down the stairs to the basement, how there's complete total darkness, how they're all like just clawing away at the dirt with their bare hands. It's like, it all feels like some sort of weird cult shit, and I love it. Yeah, and then we end up figuring out that the reason why they're digging is because the aliens are looking for water, which is like, oh, duh, of course they're looking and digging for water in streams. They were trying to invade a planet made entirely of water before. And as we know, and of course they would go to Earth for the refugees when their invasion failed of the water planet, because what is the Earth made mostly of? Boom! Water! It's like, it's one of those cool things that like makes it's so obvious and so much in plain sense, but you're not able to quite figure it out at once. But once you figure it out, it's like, brain blast, you know? It's just this manga is one of the most clever and well written things I've ever read. It's just so good. You gotta read it. You gotta read Souboutei Must Be Destroyed. If you're watching this podcast and you haven't watched the manga, stop watching this podcast or stop listening to it, whatever, and read the manga. Just do it. It is so good. Trust me, you will not regret it. Um, and this also gave me like another idea, and I wonder if could Floor's psychic power somehow be connected to the water planet, because the water planet itself also had telekinesis abilities sort of similar to Floor. I mean, I'm probably overthinking it. There probably is a connection, and it's just because again we've established on this earth that there are people with supernatural powers and stuff, so it's probably not that. But yeah, eventually Sichi finally gets to the mansion to begin his attack, and there's something that I just love that the manga does. So when Sichi finally gets to the mansion, the first thing he does when he launches his attack is he destroys the sign bearing the Suribachi name. And this is so cool. It's like, chef's kiss purpose, because by destroying the sign, the sort of the symbol of the name of this place, this building of fear and oppression and terror, by just by destroying the sign first, sort of the symbol of like the fear and terror of behind this mansion is being broken down by Sichi's fight. And it's just like, just as I say again, chef's kiss, perfection. It's so good, so good. And later on, we end up Sichi's beginning his attack. Um, Takako is basically able to figure out, of course, that, like the aliens, these monsters, like need water to survive, but also that they're weak to nitrogen. So that leads to the floor sending out a psychic message to anyone who can hear it to tell them to get the nitrogen to the mansion, which Sichi hears, of course, because of his own psychic powers, due to being part of the alien. So he ends up sending that off to the prime ministers. So they're sending like a bunch of nitrogen to the mansion, but it's having trouble getting through. So, what Rakuro, yeah, I think that's how it's pronounced. Rakuro. What he does is he ends up he knows that like people are gonna die if he doesn't help them, because he also has a psychic connection due to his powers. So he goes to the people delivering the nitrogen, and he gets on his knees and he begs them to help him, beg them to help them get the nitrogen to the people to save them. And like we see these truck drivers, these delivery boys, we see like how the other soldiers and the cops have been treating them kind of like garbage. They're just sort of rude and disrespectful. And these guys are clearly used to getting the shit talked to them. Like, it's kind of like how most retailer workers feel, where you're just kind of used to people giving you shit and being assholes for no reason. But because Rockro bows his head down, pleased with them, and ends up showing this, they help him, because this is the first time that anyone has actually treated them with proper respect, and like, okay, we have to help this kid. We're not going to let this kid down. And I love it, because again, it's the same example of humanity's sort of kindness coming to humanity's kindness, and like all the good stuff of humanity coming together to help combat against this horrific evil and cruelty that is the Souboutei Mansion. It is so terrifying, because essentially a man is born from human malice and cruelty and suffering. And the only way to truly combat it is with the kindness and compassion of humanity. And I just love that stuff in mangas. Of course, so maybe I'm looking at it wrong. Maybe that's not the actual intent of the manga. Like, they could always reveal something else, but like this is what I've interpreted so far, just based on the first arc. But yeah, next Floor later attempts to sacrifice herself because I probably forgot to mention earlier, but one of her powers is that she can like psychically teleport things near her. So her plan is to like teleport all the nitrogen to the center of these like this huge army of all the soldiers of the possessed soldiers so they can kill them. Of course, there's a problem of like Flora. She's basically like she's been doing a lot of teleporting lately, and that's been killing her stamina. So she is very likely going to die when she do this, and she wants to do this to basically to save the professor who like because I probably forgot to mention this earlier, but the professor basically adopted her to research her because he wanted to research more of her powers, and like but she wants to sacrifice herself to save this man. And Taco is like, why? He's a selfish asshole who only took you in so he could experiment on you. Why would you do that to him? And like she basically is like, yeah, he probably wasn't the best man, but he was also like the first person to show her genuine kindness, and like he saved her from her shitty abusive family and living on the streets. Like he, even though wasn't perfect, made her life just the slightest bit better. So she wants to do whatever she can to help him, but she also saying that she wants to save Taco too because like earlier in the manga he saved her from the aliens. Like how could she like not want to save the people who have who even if it just so slightly made her life better. And like oh, that just pulls at the heartstrings so much. It's like really good. And like so eventually she commits the last minute save. She brings the explosions, nitrogen, all the other experts besides Kurenai who they sent away because like her abilities wouldn't be effective. Like they try to sacrifice themselves to ignite the nitrogen to create this huge explosion. They'll kill the aliens and presumably them as well. And like Flora, she's ready to be sacrificed, but then Takako shows up and pulls the last minute save, and he saves her. And oh, it's so good, so good. Again, Takako is like he's one of those protagonists who's like he's not gonna accept people dying. If he can save somebody, if he can do everything in his power to help them, he'll save them. God dang it! And like oh, it's so cool. It's like Superman coming to have to save Batman after he tries to sacrifice himself to like save the world from like I don't know some sort of giant monster. It's like oh, it's so cool. Like that refusal to just to accept the idea that you can't save someone, to try your best to help someone. Just and it again, it's also good because Floor, her life is kind of shitty, and she's sure laments that if she could have just lived longer, maybe her life would have even got to even better with these new connections she's making. And you feel bad for her because you feel like it's all over. But then Taco's like, nope, saving you. And it's like, because now she gets a second chance. She gets to continue living life, and it's amazing. And like most of the mansion just gets destroyed by this explosion. Like there's still like these bizarre underground parts of the mansion that are left, but like a big chunk of it has been destroyed, and so have allowed the like army of monsters. So we've gotten a massive victory over the mansion. They've managed to not only have they learned the weakness of the monster, which is nitrogen, which but they've also managed to give massive blow against the mansion and cause it this huge destruction. It's like, oh, it's so good. Like again, it's very much not like the battle has been won. The war isn't over, but they've got a legit fighting chance now. They've managed to hit this monstrosity where it hurts, and they're ready to go again and keep fighting. But yeah, that's sort of like where the first arc ends, or like what I seem to perceive as the first arc. Because I've asked other people read, and they said this is like probably the closest point in which the first arc ends. There aren't. I mentioned earlier, but there really isn't like an official name for this arc. However, I like to call it the Souboutei invasion arc because most of this arc is focusing on Taco and the other supernatural experts like going into the mansion trying to take it down. But yeah, the final thoughts. I adore this manga so much. I can't wait to continue reading the rest of it. I can already tell this is without a doubt going to become my favorite because it's like I haven't mentioned this earlier, but I probably should. The artwork in this manga is amazing. It's very like it's sort of it's very high detailed, a lot of like scribbly, messy lines, but it all works so well to create this super vivid and just gorgeous artwork. Characters are extremely expressive. The designs are all unique and interesting, and the way the monsters and the horror conveyed through this is just like, oh, it's so creepy in the most perfect and amazing way possible. Like seriously, if even if what I've said about the story isn't going to convince you to read the manga, you have to read it for this artwork. It is so good. Oh, and also the action in it is also amazing. Like the way it draws Suichi's like drill arm parts and stuff, just so good. So good. But yeah, I freaking love this manga. I can already tell it's going to be favorite, and Taco is going to be one of my favorite characters of all time. And I can't wait to see more interactions between him and the mysterious painter, because like their chemistry already is just bam off the bat, fantastic. Their dynamics is going to be amazing. But I just can't wait to see more of Takako, more of Flow 2, more of Koronai, more of Sichi, more of Rakuro, more of the Prime Ministers, just everything. This manga is already, it's got like the characters are all fantastic. The plot is not only incredibly imaginative and unique, but also just incredibly well told. The artwork gorgeous, the action fantastic, the horror so creepy but so fascinating to read. In the plot twist already, that reveal that these monsters are actually an alien invasion and this isn't just a haunted house. This is a freaking like alien invasion conspiracy shit. There's so many elements to play in this story. It's so creative. It's so cool. Again, read this manga. If you haven't, just read it. You are not going to regret it. Probably one of the best experiences you will ever have reading a manga. And I am just on the first arc. Like, I don't know, maybe it could turn to shit towards the end. But like, I'm gonna be honest, I doubt it. I doubt something that is this quality, high quality so well. And like I've heard about this manga's work. They're like really good. Like I've talked to people who are a huge fan of their work, and from what I can see and what I've already killed, yeah, I get the hype. This manga is fantastic. Read it. Read Souboutei Must Be Destroyed. Read it, read it, read it, read it, read it! Ah! Yeah. Okay, that's everything. I love this first arc. I can't wait to read more of the manga. I can't wait to see more of the characters. I can't wait to see how this manga is gonna end, because I bet the ending is just gonna be like just so mind bending, insane. Like it's gonna be on the levels of like a Kingdom Hearts ending or like a Kirby final boss. Just something that just like mind blowing, crazy, pure Kino hype shit. Ah! But yeah, that'll be the it's for the end of the podcast. I'm not sure what next week's episode will be. I was hoping to get the second Kingdom Hearts 1 replay episode. I was hoping that would be episode 4. But like I've been busy with other stuff and playing other games. So if I had to make a guess, next week's podcast episode will either be the second arc of Souboutei Must Be Destroyed, or it could be Grim Grimoire once more, which I've been playing lately. It's the latest Vanillaware game. It's basically a remake of one of their earliest games. It's been having a lot of fun. I'm not 100%. I think it definitely could have podcast potential because it's a Vanillaware game, of course. But I also think that like after I finish playing the game, I'm probably gonna have to rewatch all the cutscenes so that I can understand the story and sort of a greater scope. Because one of those, it's a series in which I like playing the game, but it's also kind of difficult to come up with notes as I play it for the podcast. Because like my process for these podcasts is like I play something or read something or watch something, and as I'm doing it, I take notes down during my thoughts so that I can like tell, so that I have like those notes to help me guide me when I make the podcast. With Grimoire, it's been a bit difficult to come up with notes as I'm playing the game. So I think like after I finish the game and rewatch the cutscenes, I'll try to take notes again, and that will help me figure out whether or not Grimoire is podcast material. I think there is a decent chance, so it could very likely be episode 4 because I think I've gotten already a decent way through the game, so I definitely think I could finish it in time for next week. But again, probably either that or more Souboutei Must Be Destroyed. I do hope they'll be able to get the Kingdom Hearts podcast, the next episode, next part of that, before the end of April. But like, it is difficult sometimes to get through the Kingdom Hearts sometimes. But I finished like Agrabah. I got that world done, so I've gotten some good progress from that, and I've already got plenty of notes for that too. So we're definitely going to be able to get the next episode. Not sorry, we'll definitely probably get another Kingdom Hearts 1 replay podcast this month. At least that's what I'm hoping. Good chance. But yeah, that should be everything. Thank you all for watching my podcast. If you like it or you want to check out more of my content, please like and subscribe. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. See you guys next time.